December 31st, 1965, 11:47. The party was spectacular. 200 guests. France's elite. Actors, musicians, politicians, aristocrats. Everyone who mattered in French society. Celebrating the end of night. Brigitte Bardot stood near the champagne fountain, counting down the minutes until she could leave. These parties exhausted her. The performance, the expectations, the constant awareness of being watched. Across the room, Johnny Hallyday was watching her, had been watching her all night. Everyone knew Johnny was obsessed with Brigitte. He'd been pursuing her for 3 years. Public declarations of love, songs written about her, interviews where he'd say things like, "Brigitte is the only woman I'll ever truly love." Brigitte had rejected him gently but firmly, multiple times. They were friends, nothing more. She didn't feel that way about him, but Johnny never gave up, kept hoping, kept pursuing, kept believing she'd eventually say yes. At 11:55 p.m., the host announced, 5 minutes until midnight. Everyone prepare for the countdown. Guests gathered, couples finding each other, champagne glasses being filled. Johnny moved through the crowd toward Brigitte. She saw him coming, tried to look busy, engaged in conversation with someone, anyone. But he reached her anyway. "Brigitte, can we talk? Just for a moment?" She sighed. "Johnny, if this is another declaration, please, just 1 minute, before midnight." Something in his voice made her pause. Desperation, determination. "All right, 1 minute." They stepped onto a small balcony, away from the crowd, but still visible through the glass doors, still being watched. "I'm going to ask you something," Johnny said, "and I need you to really consider it, not just dismiss it immediately like you always do. Johnny, I love you. I've loved you for 3 years, and I know you don't feel the same way, but I think you could, if you gave us a real chance." Brigitte shook her head. "We've discussed this. I don't feel that way about you. I care about you as a friend. That's not enough. I want more. I deserve more. You deserve someone who loves you. That's not me. It could be, if you tried." Inside, people were watching through the glass, whispering, speculating. Are they arguing? He's probably declaring his love again. She'll reject him. She always does. Poor Johnny. He should give up. But Johnny wasn't giving up. He was doubling down. "What if I gave you everything?" Johnny said. "Marriage, security, devotion, total commitment. Would that change your mind?" "You can't negotiate someone into loving you, but you could choose to love me. Love is a choice, Brigitte. You could choose me." That's not how it works. At exactly midnight, fireworks exploded outside. The crowd inside erupted in cheers. "Bonne année, Happy New Year." And Johnny Hallyday dropped to one knee on the balcony. Brigitte stared at him in horror. "No, Johnny, don't." But he was already pulling out a ring, holding it up, speaking loud enough for people inside to hear through the glass. "Brigitte Bardot, will you marry me?" The room inside went completely silent, everyone turning to look, cameras appearing from nowhere, flashbulbs starting to pop. Brigitte looked at Johnny, at the ring, at the crowd watching through the glass, at the cameras. This wasn't a private proposal. This was a public performance, a spectacle designed to pressure her into saying yes. Because how could Brigitte Bardot reject France's beloved Johnny Hallyday at midnight on New Year's Eve in front of 200 witnesses? "Stand up," Brigitte said quietly. "Not until you answer." "Johnny, stand up. Now, answer first." She looked at him, still on one knee, still holding the ring, still performing for the audience inside, and felt anger rising. He was using the crowd, using the cameras, using the romance of the moment to manipulate her into saying yes. This wasn't love. This was coercion, disguised as romance. Brigitte spoke loud enough for everyone inside to hear. "No, I..." A collective gasp from the room. Cameras going crazy. Johnny's face draining of color. "What? No, I won't marry you. I don't love you. I've told you this repeatedly. And proposing publicly to pressure me into saying yes is manipulative and cruel." Brigitte I'm not trying to pressure. Yes, you are. You orchestrated this, made it public, so I'd be too embarrassed to say no. But I'm saying no anyway. The room inside was in chaos. People whispering, some looking scandalized, some looking sympathetic to Brigitte, most just shocked. Johnny stood up slowly. You're humiliating me. You humiliated yourself by refusing to accept no, by making your proposal a public spectacle, by trying to use social pressure to manipulate my answer. I love you. You love the idea of me. You love Brigitte Bardot. But you don't know me, don't love me, because if you did, you'd respect my no. She turned and walked back inside, past the staring guests, past the cameras, straight to the coat check. She was leaving. Immediately, before anyone could stop her, or ask her questions, or make her explain. But the host intercepted her. Brigitte, please, don't leave like this. It's New Year's. Stay, have champagne, let this blow over. I'm not interested in letting it blow over. Johnny needs to understand that no means no. And everyone here needs to stop romanticizing his obsessive pursuit as love. He's heartbroken. He's entitled. There's a difference. She left. The party continued without her. But the scandal was just beginning. By morning, the story was everywhere. Bardot rejects Hallyday publicly. New Year's humiliation for France's biggest star. Brigitte's brutal no stuns nation. The coverage was split. Half the country sympathized with Johnny. He bared his heart, and she destroyed him publicly. The other half supported Brigitte. She's allowed to say no, even publicly, even to France's sweetheart. But the loudest voices were condemning Brigitte, calling her cruel, heartless, ungrateful, that someone as beloved as Johnny would even want her. Johnny gave interviews, playing the heartbroken romantic. I love her. I've always loved her. I thought maybe if I showed her how serious I was, she'd give us a chance. But she humiliated me in front of everyone. A journalist asked, do you think proposing publicly was fair to her? If she wanted to say no, you made it very difficult. I thought she'd say yes. Why would I propose if I thought she'd reject me? But she'd already told you no, multiple times. You knew her answer. I thought she'd change her mind. That's what love is, persistence, or that's what harassment is. Johnny ended the interview immediately. Brigitte gave one interview to a journalist she trusted. Everyone's calling you cruel, heartless. Do you regret how you handled it? No. I regret that Johnny put me in that position, but I don't regret my answer or how I delivered it. You could have been gentler. Gentler how? I've told him no privately multiple times. He ignored that, so he escalated to a public proposal specifically designed to pressure me into yes. How should I have responded? Maybe say yes and then break the engagement later. So lie? Perform acceptance to avoid embarrassing him? That's not fair to me or to him, but you humiliated him. He humiliated himself by refusing to hear no, by making his proposal a spectacle, by trying to use social pressure as a weapon. Do you think persistence is romantic? Brigitte's answer was immediate. No. Persistence after someone has said no is harassment. We romanticize it, call it dedication, call it true love, but it's just refusal to respect boundaries. Johnny says he loves you. Johnny loves the idea of conquering me, of being the man who finally got Brigitte Bardot. That's not love, that's ego. That's harsh. It's honest. And I'm tired of pretending persistence is romantic when it's actually coercive. The backlash was immediate and vicious. Letters to editors, angry op-eds, public figures condemning Brigitte for cruelty to a national treasure. One columnist wrote, Brigitte Bardot has revealed her true nature. Cold, calculating, incapable of appreciating genuine love when offered. Johnny Hallyday deserves better. Another, perhaps Bardot is so damaged by fame that she can't recognize real affection. Her rejection of Hallyday is evidence of her emotional dysfunction. Brigitte read the coverage and felt vindicated in her decision. They were proving her point, that women weren't allowed to say no without being pathologized, that rejection was treated as cruelty rather than boundary setting. But there were supporters too. A feminist magazine ran a piece, "Brigitte Bardot's No is Revolutionary." The article argued, "For years we've been told that persistent pursuit is romantic, that women who reject advances just need more convincing. Bardot's public rejection of Hallyday challenges that narrative. She said no, clearly, definitively, and refused to soften it, to protect his ego." Another piece, "Why Men Can't Handle Women's Rejection." The vitriol directed at Bardot reveals our culture's discomfort with female autonomy. Hallyday pursued her for years despite her clear disinterest. But when she finally rejected him publicly, matching his public proposal, she's the villain. Why? Because women are supposed to manage men's emotions even while enforcing their own boundaries. Johnny's career barely suffered. If anything, he gained sympathy. The heartbroken romantic, the devoted lover, rejected by the Ice Queen. He released a song 3 months later, "Mon cœur brisé," My Broken Heart, about loving someone who couldn't love him back, obviously about Brigitte. It became his biggest hit. Brigitte heard it on the radio and felt sick. He turned her rejection into profit, commodified his heartbreak while she dealt with public condemnation. They didn't speak for 7 years. At industry events, they'd avoid each other. When forced into the same space, they'd exchange cold nods, nothing more. Then, in 1972, they ran into each other at a small restaurant, both there by accident, both trying to leave quietly. Brigitte, wait, she turned. Johnny, can we talk? Just for a moment? About what? How you turned my rejection into a hit song. How you let the press destroy me for setting a boundary. I'm sorry. I've wanted to say that for years. I'm sorry. They sat, talked. For the first time in 7 years. I was young, Johnny said, and stupid, and entitled. I thought if I loved you enough, you'd have to love me back. That persistence would win. It doesn't work that way. I know that now. I've grown up, had relationships that actually worked, because they were mutual. And I look back at how I pursued you, and I'm embarrassed. You should be. You harassed me for 3 years, then made a public spectacle to pressure me, then profited from my rejection. I know, and I'm sorry. Genuinely, I was wrong about all of it. Brigitte was quiet, processing. Do you understand why I said no? Why I said it the way I did? I do now. You'd told me no privately. I ignored that. So you had to say it publicly and definitively to make me finally hear it. Exactly. It wasn't cruelty. It was the only way to get through to you. I know, and I've spent 7 years learning that lesson. Learning that no means no, that persistence isn't romantic, that real love requires mutual interest. I'm glad you learned it. I just wish you'd learned it before proposing to me at midnight on New Year's Eve in front of 200 people. Johnny laughed sadly. Yeah, me too. They parted as friends, not close friends, but without animosity. Years later, in 1998, Johnny was asked about the proposal in an interview. One of my biggest regrets, I was young and didn't understand boundaries. Thought persistence was romantic. Brigitte was right to say no, right to say it publicly. I needed to hear it that definitively. Do you still love her? I never really loved her. I loved the idea of her, loved the challenge of conquering Brigitte Bardot. That's not love, that's ego, and she saw through it, even when I didn't. In 2004, Brigitte was asked about the incident. Johnny Hallyday proposed to you at midnight on New Year's Eve 1965. You said no publicly. Do you regret it? Not for a second, even though half the country condemned you? Especially because half the country condemned me. It proved my point, that women aren't allowed to enforce boundaries without being called cruel. Do you think persistence is ever romantic? No. Persistence after rejection is harassment. We've romanticized it for too long, called it dedication when it's actually disrespect. Johnny has since apologized. Good. He should have. He spent 3 years ignoring my no, then made a spectacle to pressure me, then profited from my rejection. An apology was overdue. When Johnny died in 2017, Brigitte sent flowers to the funeral with a note. You taught me that saying no, clearly, definitively, publicly, is sometimes the only way to be heard. Thank you for eventually learning to listen. Rest in peace. B. Johnny Hallyday proposed to Brigitte Bardot at midnight. Her answer shocked all of France. New Year's Eve, 1965. A public proposal, a calculated spectacle, an attempt to use social pressure to get a yes. And Brigitte said no. Publicly, definitively, without softening it to protect his ego. The country was scandalized. How could she reject France's sweetheart? How could she humiliate him so publicly? How could she be so cruel? But Brigitte understood something the country didn't. Johnny's public proposal was the cruelty, the manipulation, the refusal to accept her previous rejections. Her public no was simply matching his energy, refusing to be pressured, setting a boundary, definitively enough that he'd finally hear it. It cost her. The press destroyed her. Half the country called her heartless. Johnny turned her rejection into profit with his heartbreak song. But Brigitte never regretted it, because she'd learned that sometimes the only way to make someone hear no is to say it loud enough that they can't ignore it, even if that means saying it at midnight in front of 200 people. On New Year's Eve, Johnny eventually understood, apologized, admitted he'd been wrong, but it took 7 years. And by then, the damage was done. The scandal became legendary. The moment Brigitte Bardot rejected France's biggest rock star and refused to apologize for enforcing her boundaries, some called it cruel. Others called it revolutionary. Brigitte called it necessary. And 50 years later, her answer, that definitive, public, unapologetic no, stands as a reminder. Persistence after rejection isn't romantic, it's harassment. And women are allowed to say no without managing men's emotions about it, even at midnight, even on New Year's Eve, even to Johnny Hallyday.